we knew that we knew that the songs were worth more. We knew that we were just getting started. We knew that like we were building something, and we had total confidence in it, man. At times super arrogant, but like we were very confident in our youth.
My name's Adam, by the way.
Hey, Adam. I'm Duquette.
Duquette, and this podcast is about you and your journey in music and how you got to where you are now.
How much time do we have?
We have a little bit of time. We got a little bit of time. What are you burning there? Some sage?
Palo Santo.
Ah, what does that do? I'm very bad with this stuff.
No. Palo Santo is a holy wood from South America. There's a couple of different kinds of Palo Santo trees. I won't even attempt to say the scientific name because I will not do it honor and justice. So it's really endangered. One type of it is really endangered in Africa. All of mine comes from a family in Ecuador where it's pretty regular. It's a holy wood. Same family as frankincense, myrrh.
Okay.
It's burned in spiritual ceremonies. It's burned in Orthodox churches. It's, all over the place.
Interesting. Yeah. That's really interesting.
I'm sitting in my home studio office space. It's kind of
wow.
Because there's a lot of crazy art. Sorry, the smoke is going everywhere.
No, it's cool.
There's gear.
Cool effect.
Gear everywhere.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So whereabouts are you?
I'm in Birmingham, Alabama.
Birmingham, Alabama. Right on. I'm in Nashville, so not too far from you.
Just right up the road.
Exactly.
I was actually born in Nashville, Tennessee.
You were? That was my next question. Where were you born? So born in Nashville, were you raised there?
No, lived there briefly as a child and then moved to Wyoming until the age of 7 up in the Bighorn Mountains.
Okay.
And then would spend my school in Birmingham. When my parents divorced, my mother moved us back to Alabama, and I would go to school here and then go to Wyoming every summer. So it's a lot of confusion as a kid.
Right. Wow. Going back and forth, is Birmingham, where you're in Birmingham or where you grew up, was it more of like a city suburbs and versus
versus Wyoming, which when I was little, we lived on 2,000 acres that butted up against the Bighorn National Forest.
Wow.
So super remote, didn't see a lot of people, lived in tents for a while, was bathed in creeks, had my mother driving me an hour to violin lessons because she wanted to keep us cultured, even though we were ragamuffins out in the woods. So it was very different than coming back to Birmingham. For a while, we were in the suburbs, and then my mother moved closer to the city. And then obviously I still spent a ton of time in Nashville with my grandparents. And I mean, all my aunts and uncles are still there. My brother's still there. My daughter just moved there.
Oh, wow.
I need to drive up there and pick up an 8-track I bought from Andrew Combs. It's just been sitting in his house since the pandemic been going on.
Oh, wow. Okay. Whereabouts in Nashville were you born? Did you grow up in Nashville or on the outskirts? Because I'm not in Nashville, Davis County. I'm south, but I was just curious.
Yeah. So my family has been in that area, I think, going back to the 1700s.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Nolensville, Tennessee was founded by relatives.
Really?
Yeah, that's my grandmother's her name was Mary Alice Nolan, and her father or her great grandfather and his brothers. I mean, the history is so insane. I can't keep up with all of it, but I know there's a farm outside of Franklin that was in my family for 154 years.
Really?
Yeah, called Taproot Farm.
Taproot Farm.
Now they do weddings and stuff there, but my relatives are literally buried behind this house where they have weddings. Because I wanted to shoot a music video there when I did my last record. I had a song called Storms, and I wanted to record a live version of it in the cemetery with this string quartet, all these players from Nashville that I use. We never got to do it, but maybe one day. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just Googled it because that's whereabouts I am around Franklin. So I was curious to see how close
that's where we lived when I was a little kid, was Franklin. I think I was born at Thomas or Baptist, or I'd have to look at my birth certificate.
Wow.
And then, my relatives have been in Franklin for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah. And then, but to be one of the people that, founded Nolensville, that's not very far away from there either. I mean, that's crazy.
There's a lot, there's, with that comes the good and bad of your family history. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, but it's still really cool. It's cool to be able to actually learn and know. And, I'm lucky that I have relatives like an aunt of mine and my brother who have done tons of research and have books on our family history and have shared information, because, it's cool to know.
Yeah. And they save a lot of, not save, but they protect it here in Tennessee, which I was surprised.
I think I think there's certain areas of the country, but it seems to be especially a super Southern thing. Mm-hmm. Although I know, friends from New York that families were immigrants and came in and never left the city, but man, they have everything saved. They can tell you their family lineage going way back. Mm-hmm. But it seems to really be a deep Southern thing. My wife has just started digging into some of her family history, and we've discovered that we knew they were in the garment industry for several generations. And then we found out they actually go back 7 generations to early Ukraine, which has made all the shit going on right now even more bizarre for everything. But yeah, man.
That's so interesting. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, you talked about going to violin lessons as a kid. In Wyoming. What was that, the first instrument you learned how to play?
That was the very first instrument I attempted to play. I'm not sure if I ever properly learned it. Okay. I'm sure my dad would maybe say, I don't know, my ears said you didn't learn it. But it was first violin and then piano. But I was such a rowdy kid, I was constantly breaking bones.
Oh, okay.
So I would be in the middle of piano lessons, and then I would break my arm on a skateboard or on a dirt bike, or, broke my wrist playing soccer. It's obnoxious how many bones I've broken in my body.
Okay. So you would, it sounds like you would be taking part in these lessons and then you'd hurt yourself. So then it would set you back a bit.
Well, exactly. I would literally start, and then a few weeks later, be like, I got a cast. Can I practice with one hand? So eventually I bailed on the piano. I started to take classical guitar lessons, early junior high, then broke my arm again.
Oh my gosh.
Bailed out of that. And the teacher was really mean. It was intense, and he was very serious about his practice, and it was absolutely no fun for me. And
I don't understand that. I've heard the story a handful of times where it's the teacher is basically the reason why you quit playing. Wouldn't you think that they would want to kind of embrace that? Yeah, they'd be like, okay, well, I really want you to learn. So what do you want to hear? Or what do you want to learn how to play? Not, if you don't learn this, you're out.
That's kind of how, sorry, I got to mute my phone here.
No, good.
That's kind of how this was. It was shocking that my piano teachers were all amazing. They were fun, and from what I remember of it, but this one guitar teacher, and then so I never took another lesson again after that. Mm-hmm. My brother got his first acoustic guitar, and we would sit there at our cassette deck or the turntable and teach ourselves songs just from listening. So
wow.
We both learned, and he had a couple of friends that were insanely naturally gifted musicians that could play piano, could sit down, hear a song, and then go play it. Right. Mm-hmm. They instantly transpose things. But he and I, the first thing I learned to play on the guitar with him was the intro to "Is There Anybody Out There" by Pink Floyd off the Wall out.
Okay.
And so there was this guitar finger picking part.
Mm-hmm.
And I really should relearn it. I haven't played that since I was a teenager, but that was one of my first things I learned on guitar with my brother.
Wow.
And
What
now
a way
he's
to
a doctor.
start.
Now he's a doctor at Vanderbilt in Nashville.
Is he really?
And still plays guitar. Yeah, he's got a collection of guitars, and
Wow. I'm just curious now. What kind of doctor is he?
he's like one of the heads of the ER at Vanderbilt.
Really? Now I get to name drop you if I ever need to.
Look, total side story real quick. Like we were in Nashville when our son was little, and he got really sick. He was like 3 months old. Okay. And the pediatrician in Birmingham was like, you need to take him to Vanderbilt Children's. And we happened to be in an Airbnb right down the street. I was like, oh, I know where it is. We go. I honestly did not know what my brother did other than being a doctor. And the resident was asking us all these questions. And he was like, how did you know to come here? And I was like, well, our pediatrician said to, but my brother's a doctor here. And when I told them my brother's name, the resident got real nervous and was like, that's my boss.
Oh,
wow. But then people were kind of acting weird, and it turned out a bunch of the staff were fans of my music. So after the respiratory therapist like cleared my son's bronchial pathways and stuff and answered all these questions, he sat down and looked real serious and was like, okay. He was like, now let's talk about your last record. He was like, let's have questions. And I was like, what are you talking about, dude? So
that's pretty cool to be, especially, I mean, not cool that you were there or anything that goes down with that, but the fact that they knew who you were and were like, oh my gosh, like let's chat about your album. Like that,
in the middle of the emergency room. It was kind of funny.
Wow. Okay. So, well, then from, the guitar lessons, learning that Pink Floyd song, when did you start like writing music, or when did you start playing with other people as far as like a band went, and like how old were you when that all started?
I started trying to write songs in high school, and they were really terrible. I mean, some people like have the gift when they're really young, or I don't know. Like I was into a lot in high school. I mean, music has been part of my life, like digesting, listening, and being inspired. Like it's not this way with everyone, but I can literally tell you my life history based off of like music periods, and specific. I tie memories to music, good and bad. Like a song will come on and I will literally be transported back to that time of that moment. But in high school, I started trying to write, and when you'd start learning covers, and I was at the time in high school learning like Neil Young and Grateful Dead. And then when I went to boarding school, and I was there with a guy from Seattle, and he had all the early Sub Pop stuff. So like in the late 80s, we were trying to learn Mudhoney songs and early Nirvana and all sorts of stuff. And then I did my first like performance in high school with a group of guys where we wrote one song and then we covered a few people like the Dead, Camper Van Beethoven. I can't remember what else. And I graduated high school and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I either wanted to go live in the woods and teach people how to canoe and rock climb and all this stuff, because that's what I was heavily into, or I wanted to make music. And I came back to Birmingham, started college, ran into my old skateboard buddy who goes by AA Bondi now. And we started our first band when we were 18.
Wow.
I dropped out of school 9 weeks later, and we started recording and booking shows and playing. Like we just went hard right out of the gate. There's times I could always reflect back and say, oh, I should have stayed in school and taken business classes, because if you want music to be your life, you are running a business. Sure. It's hard for artists to grasp the concept of being creative and running a business and being okay, like telling yourself it is good to be paid and it is okay to be paid. Like there's this stigma among like a lot of creative communities where it's like, no, you got to be in the trenches and grinding it out and being broke. It's like, man, don't be a martyr for your music. Like understand business, understand what it takes to run releasing records, doing publishing. If you end up trying to sign a record deal, understanding those contracts. But yeah, I started like writing my first like legit songs, like 18 years old, started playing shows. We were a band called Volume, and it was me and AA Bondi and a couple other people. And then we became Shallow, There's still me and Bondi and this girl Anne-Marie, and then our guitar player in Volumes, God bless Newbie, ended up becoming the drummer as we transitioned into Verbena. He came back on board,
and yeah, Verbena ended up doing, you know, you guys got signed to a major label and put a bunch of
We did
records
a lot.
out. Yeah, right. I mean, I don't know if you want to chat about that at all.
Well, I mean, it's part of the journey, you know what I mean? Like, I think for a long time, I never wanted to discuss Verbena stuff because it's weird when you're that young and people throw millions of dollars at you, and then you leave a band because of personal reasons, people doing drugs. I had a kid, you know, it gets weird where you don't want to talk about it. But as I've gotten older, it's part of my life. It's part of my story. So I don't want to ignore that. And so much of what I learned came through that time period. You know, our work ethic was insane. I mean, we rehearsed every day, like every night. I was working as a chef, would go in at 5 a.m, get off at 5, go to rehearse till midnight, sleep for a few hours, do it again. We did that 7 days a week.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, we're fortunate enough that we had good people around us early on to where we didn't take the very first deals that were thrown at us. We didn't take the first publishing deals that were thrown at us because it's real sweet candy.
Right.
Like
That's incredible that you had that like willpower not to, instead of being like, oh my gosh, they want to give money to us and sign us to a record label. This is the dream. Sign it away.
Straight up. I mean, when you're in your early 20s and someone's like, I'm going to give you $40,000 and own most of your publishing. They don't say it loud like that. But
Right,
like,
right.
You don't realize that $40,000 is going to be gone really fast, and you're not going to make a penny until all that is recouped, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're getting a cut of it for the rest of your life. So these are the things that you don't learn unless you go study it, or you have the right people around you teaching you and educating you. You either got to be self-motivated to learn it, or you got to have the right people around you guiding you and educating you. And we had a manager early on who was not even a music manager. He ran a paper, but he loved our band.
Okay.
And he was a music fanatic, and he had studied like managers that discovered bands and throughout, you know, rock and roll history. And yeah, when those first pub deals came through, and we happened to randomly connect with a great entertainment lawyer named Steve Nierenberg, and Steve was like, no, don't sign that, man. Like, that's the worst idea ever.
Oh, wow. Was that, but I mean, to have that, you know, like you said, somebody's going to come to you with 40 grand and be like, we're going to give you $40,000 and you're going to blah, blah, blah. Did you ever, well, I would imagine that you could kind of get to the point where you're like, are we making a mistake by not signing this? Sure. Like, is this our only shot to do this? Like, how did you guys fight through that? Or how did you get it through that?
We knew that we knew that the songs were worth more. We knew that we were just getting started. We knew that like we were building something, and we had total confidence in it, man. We were at times super arrogant, but like we were very confident in our youth. Sometimes not through being naive, other times just like, man, we felt something really special. And so yeah, that's where my music journey really started, was at 18. I mean, it started when I was a kid, but like the writing songs and playing live and performing started, you know, when I was 18, and it was with mostly the same group of people until I was 28 or so. I can't remember how old I was, man. I don't know. I'd have to sit here and do the math.
Right, but
I mean, I was 10 years. So like, yeah, 18 to 28, something like that. And then, or maybe a little less, I was with Verbena, and then I left right before the first record for Capitol Records. We had signed to Capitol. We had been on Merge Records, and then we signed to Capitol Records, and we were on this label out of the UK called Satanta that did a bunch of really cool British stuff. Edwin Collins, that was in Orange Juice, and has produced some incredible hit songs. And then after that, yeah, I went solo. I had a band called Cut Grass that I'd started during Verbena, and then I was like kind of a bass player for hire while working and writing all these Cut Grass songs. I'd had a kid. I had to go get a job. I'd not had a job. I mean, had not worked for anybody in years. And I took a job fixing copy machines and fax machines because I got to ride around by myself all day in a car, and I would write songs in my car. And
Wow.
smoke way too much pot and just fix fax machines. I accidentally set one on fire one time.
Did you really?
Yep. In an office. Did not. Yeah, it was bad. I was like, do you have a fire extinguisher?
Or a big bucket of water?
Yeah, so,
wow.
You know, everything has sort of always led me to the next thing. And I've tried to just, looking back, I didn't even realize it, but I was just rolling with what, and being like really open to where I was pulled and trusting my intuition that was the right place. I didn't always make the right decision, but everything has led me to the next thing. You know, I did stuff with Cut Grass. I made 3 records that never got released because the further along it got, started to get into a really what I call the lost years of my life. Like I was a bass player for hire for everything from, like, I did a tour with this band Brother Kane. My buddy,
I know that band.
Yeah, my buddy Damon Johnson brought me on board really last minute. That's probably the most punk rock Brother Kane has ever sounded. I had like 2 days to learn 17 songs, and I just played root notes. I was just punking it out for him.
Right. Wow.
And then I played bass for the Blake Babies when they reunited. My buddy John Strum, that is now the president of Rounder Records.
Wow.
Phenomenal, great songwriter, phenomenal guitarist. We had collaborated on a lot of stuff in my band Cut Grass, and then I joined up with the Blake Babies, and then I got in trouble and got arrested, and got locked up in Etowah County Detention Center, facing a 10-year drug sentence. And ended up getting, because I was in the drug court system, which is a whole different beast of a conversation about the flaws within all that. But
of course,
that's why I wrote my first full solo record, was when I was a state inmate at the county detention center. The first songs I literally wrote in my jail cell in letters to my wife, that I've been with for 20 years. And then I got released to serve time at a men's home, but still as an inmate of the state, which makes it really weird, because if you walk off the property and don't come back, you're considered an escaped felon and you get 15 years. So all this stuff for a first-time drug offender, man, it's really, it's messed up what the criminal justice system thinks is helping people. And I'm someone that had resources. There's thousands and millions of people that have no resources, that have no money, that can't fight this, get help. But I'm trying to think through, like, you haven't even asked me that question, but like, that's my music.
No, I'm curious, but I mean, obviously it's part of your story, right? I mean, to be in that band, and then like, so did you leave when Verbena signed to Capitol? Were you, or
I was
were
still
you in
the
that
band
conversation?
when we signed. No, okay. I was in all that, man. We recorded. That was a crazy period, because back in the 90s, they were throwing money at young bands. And so I mean, we were getting flown all over the country, like getting put up in the nicest hotels, buy whatever you want. What do y'all need? Like, it's nuts what labels used to do. And I don't know what major labels do anymore, because I don't.
They look on your Spotify.
They look to see how many streams I already have.
They check your TikTok to make sure you have enough followers for them to.
And they would be very sad with mine. It would be 60 followers. Here we go. I had TikTok years ago and stopped using it. And
was it Musically? Was it Musically?
I tried Musically and then bailed, and then did TikTok and bailed, because for years I've just been terrible at social media, man. I've embraced it a lot more since my wife and I opened a shop. But I was in Verbena when we were doing all the negotiating with major labels. I didn't leave until the first official album for Capitol was about to be recorded. And we were young. We didn't see eye to eye on things. There was a lot of like drug use. Everybody was doing their own different version of some type of drugs. And I just had a kid, and I wasn't willing to stick around, man. I walked away from everything. I just, for better or worse, I told our lawyer, I told our A&R guy, I was like, man, I'm out. I'm not gonna, I can't do this right now. But, yeah, it's, Bondi and I did solo shows together when we both first put out our solo records. Because there was a hot minute where we were both on the same little indie label. But yeah, so, that's why I say, like, everything led to the next thing. Verbena led to me, starting this solo project, Cut Grass, that I did all these amazing recordings with people from like the Dexatines and Drive-By Truckers and Palace Brothers. And I got to do a lot of cool stuff. And then my full, like, main solo career really started while I was locked up. I mean,
oh my gosh.
I've never stopped writing songs. I got lost for a while and didn't release stuff, but it started when I released my solo career. Really started when I released Etowah in 2006, and that's the name of that record that I wrote up there.
Okay. Wow. So once that all happens, like, I mean, obviously, okay, you don't know what they told you you're facing, what, 10 years? You said 5 to 10 years. I mean, at that point, it's got to be like panic, obviously, and like, how am I going to deal with this? And then you go in, and do you immediately like think, okay, well, I have a lot of time on my hands. I'm going to start writing a record. And do you have a guitar in there? Like, what does that look like?
At first, no. Like,
yeah.
At first, like, so the way it went down, like, I was in the drug court system. It became increasingly difficult for me to keep up with all the requirements. You have to pay for all your drug tests. You have to pay court fees. You have to pay legal fees. I'm paying child support. I'm paying insurance. I'm trying to, like, it's all this different stuff that starts compounding.
Of course,
and
yeah.
The funny thing is, I really didn't start doing a lot. Like, my drug back then was, like, I really got into cocaine because it gives you this super false sense of importance and feeling good and numbing.
Sure. Yeah.
Stuff. At first, I was just a bored brat that was partying and thought I needed to live like Keith Richards, and I was dating this rock star girl, and that was just sort of my state of mind, right? Like, I was so far whacked out that I even wouldn't, like, I thought the recording sessions would sound better if I didn't wash my hair. like really weird OCD stuff, because I wanted the records to sound dirty and gritty.
I love that's interesting. Wow. Well, I mean, I'm like,
give me a hot shower before I record, man.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I also struggle with addiction. I've been in recovery for a while. So it's like, hearing you say these things, it's like, I just see myself, but obviously not on a level of like having, the rock star fame, but just being like the delusion of like, yeah, I just hear a lot of myself in it.
Yeah, you know what it does. I mean, it just feeds you lies of stuff. But so I forgot where we were even going with this, but
just your songwriting once you got in there.
So the writing, like, when I got in there, I was in the court system for like 2 years before I finally went and turned myself in. I got kicked out of drug court, right? Because of a failed drug test or something, this, that, and the other. And then I just hid. I was hiding in a recording studio that was in a basement of a house. And eventually I got so tired. One day I just went and turned myself into the judge. I drove up to Etowah County. I'm in this suit thinking I would look more innocent if I was in a suit, but I weighed 115 pounds and looked horrible. I looked like walking death. And the judge was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do with you, but I'm sending you to the county detention, and, we'll make a ruling on it. And they handcuffed me. They shackled my legs, my arms. First time drug offense for an empty baggie of cocaine. And then I am taken downstairs.
Wait, that's oh my gosh.
Processed, put in a cell with a man that was awaiting trial for multiple murders. I'm in the maximum security unit at the Etowah County Detention Center, where sometimes you're only out of your cell for maybe an hour a day. There's no daylight. You do not go outside. You do not see sunshine except through little cracked windows. So I was terrified at first, man. I didn't know what I was going to do to survive. And I had the fear that I would have to do things to survive that would then get me actual really serious charges and keep me locked up. That's what a lot of guys get caught up in the system. That's why the criminal justice system is just so out of whack in this country.
Well, yeah, because it's interesting because I skateboarded growing up, and I just read an article with a guy that we used to skate with who he became a pro at one point at a really young age. And like, he had the story of going into the system as well. And kind of, I watched an interview with him that was really recent because he started this program in San Diego for people in recovery and getting them out off the streets and into skateboarding, essentially, is what he's doing.
Oh,
And
cool.
so he had an interview, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I saw somebody posted it up on Facebook, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I remember him. I know him. So I clicked in and watched it. And he had the similar story where it's like, you're kind of put in this system where it's like, you're told to do something. And if you don't do it, like who's going to protect you within the system? But then if you do it, you're also going to be stuck in this forever. Right. I mean, it's kind of I mean, I wouldn't even know how to handle that.
I have a relative that at a very young age, he got caught up in the court system. And he's still an amazing human. He's just lost now through addiction. But man, he wasn't bad until he got put in the court system. And then it got really bad. And what he needed was help dealing with all his childhood trauma. He didn't need, a lot of it just creates more trauma that creates more problems that then keeps you in a cycle and a revolving door of the criminal justice system in America. You know, it's really the opposite. I know a lot of people have good intentions of, we are here to help. But when you have for-profit prisons, right, where people are making money off the labor and other systems like that, indentured servitude, especially with minorities and poor people that are the majority of those locked up, it's a mess and continuous to this cycle. But I was loopy, I was delirious when I got locked up. I think I had to sober up in my cell and didn't know what was going to happen. And once I was given paper and pencil to be able to write letters, I started writing to my girlfriend, who is now my wife. And then I would write, I was like, I have song, because I've always written songs. I've written songs in my dreams and woken up and write them down. I hear melodies and know the chords I need to play. Like one time I wrote a song called My Rolling Hill, which I've never released. I should probably record it, but I was in San Francisco. It was after I left Verbena, and I needed to just get away from Birmingham. And so I went and stayed out in San Francisco for quite a while. And I went to a party out in Oakland at this this punk rock house, these punk bands that I used to book when I was a teenager in Birmingham. Because I used to do that before I played music. I promoted punk rock shows.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
I would book Neurosis, Christ on a Crutch, like all sorts of stuff.
Oh, wow.
But I went to this house and I was like, man, I've got this song. I need a guitar. I hear this melody. I need to write it down. And I did that. And so that's what it was like when I was in Etowah County. I would hear melodies. I would visualize the chords I think would go to it, and I'd write it in a letter to my wife.
Whoa.
So she has like the letter where I wrote the last song on the record, Etowah, is called Don't Go Back to Etowah. And it's, don't go back to Etowah. There's too many bricks on too many walls. That's the chorus. And the verse was like, I lost my life in a cold stone cell. I made my bed and I made my hell. But I knew it. And then, so that's where it first started. And then once I got released to this men's home, there you have to go through these programs of conquering chemical dependency. And then you're supposed to get a job for your work release side of things. Because I was serving time, but at a men's home after I was released from the detention center. And
sure, it's like a sober living type place ish, or maybe even worse.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a full treatment facility, but you're on a property. It's like all these trailers, and you're living with all these guys, and you go through these classes, and you have to go to church, and you have to do this, and you have to do that. But when it came to the work side, they bring in a job placement, and they're like, what have you done? Like, what's your work been? And I was like, well, at that point, I was like, I've been a chef and a professional musician. And you're in Etowah County, Alabama. They're like, well, you can't get a job being a chef here, and because you're not allowed to work around alcohol.
Okay.
And then there's no professional musician jobs in Etowah County. So the craziest part about that time was, so they then they asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, I wanted to write a new record. So they created a job where I would drive guys to work and everybody had to pay me because they were outsourcing it because you couldn't have a car there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I became the driver for the rehab. And
Oh,
I got
okay.
paid every week. So I would drive guys to their factory jobs, their construction jobs. It got to where I started taking guys to court. I would drive the cook to the grocery store to buy all the food for the compound. And then during the day, I would just write songs. There was an old guitar in the chapel that was built in the 1800s. And I would go in there and try and write songs every day. I would just play, write. And then when I got my first overnight leave, I came home. I had 24 hours. I came home and I went straight to my friend's recording studio. And I don't even think we slept. And I started recording the record. And there's like one song on the record called Golden Sun. This is on the Etowah record.
Uh-huh.
And the way that is on that album is the way we recorded it that night when I came home from Etowah County. And so
whoa,
that album was made in my friend's parents' garage over weekend leaves when I was a state inmate. I would do a little bit every time I got to come home. I would just go to the studio. And then once I was released from the program, I had somebody that put a friend that let me live in his townhouse in Wyoming. And I went out there for a few months and just wrote songs every day, just worked on lyrics, wrote lyrics, and eventually was like, all right, I got to go back to Alabama. That's where the studio is. Because there was nowhere to record in Wyoming at the time. Now Kanye's been out there. There's like all sorts of recording studios in Teton County. But
oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Kanye has a studio.
Kanye made
there?
a record. He made a record. I don't know if he has a studio, but he did a recording. He was recording out in Jackson Hole for a while. This was years ago. But yeah, man. And then it's just kind of been off to the races. You know, that was my first record. And then I did these 2 lo-fi records, like just my guitar and a cassette 4-track. It was like what I had. It's what I could afford. I did those and released those. And then I had all these. My problem for a while was I was constantly starting new projects because I write a lot of music. So I would come up with a new band name constantly. And eventually connected up with my buddy Jeffrey Kane and his brother-in-law, this guy Armand. And they're like, man, we want to help you make records, but you need to just stick by your name and quit changing it all the time. So that's when I made my last record, Rabbit Runs a Destiny. And that really was like a foundation that led to this new album, The Social Animals.
Okay. And I know. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because I recorded that record, Rabbit Runs a Destiny, with my buddy Armand at like an old house, an old apartment. And then my friend Jeffrey Kane, who was in Remy Zero, and he's in this band, The Church, that was a big band in the 80s.
Oh, I remember The Church. Yeah.
Jeffrey's in The Church now. So Jeffrey started a label called Communicating Vessels. He put out my last record. And then that's where I started doing demos. That's where I did all the demos for this new album, The Social Animals.
Wow. Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Like the journey, like it's just one step is leading to the next.
Yeah. No, yeah, because it's, you had what year did you put out the first record then?
2006.
Okay, so 2006. And then you had some other projects and things going on. And then you ended up putting the next record out, you said 2015, 2016?
No, I did Etowah 2006. I did 2 acoustic records, one in 2008.
Oh yeah, the lo-fi ones, right? With the 4-track.
Yeah, I did It Sings Because It Has a Song in 2008. I did Rugged and Fancy either 2009 or 2010. Then I did Rabbit Runs a Destiny in 2013.
Oh, okay. So that was, and then your wife ended up getting sick, and I don't really want to go there with it, but that's then
that's part of it, man. Like,
okay, cool. You know, okay,
like we can talk about that. We talk about it all the time. We try to make sure that we share it from a way that lets people know, like, this is our journey. We are not victims. Like, don't like be like, oh, poor us, we went through these struggles. It's like that is just part of life, and we've learned from all of it, and we've learned to work on ourselves as humans and as creatives and as artists and as parents. But yeah, so 2013 I put out my last record and found out we were having a baby. We didn't think we could have a baby, So we were excited.
Yeah.
But she had a super difficult pregnancy. That's where I learned that all men are complete wimps and cannot hold a candle to women, like at all.
Yeah.
And I started writing songs during that time. And then as soon as my son was born, my wife had a bacterial infection from her C-section. And then all I could do is write. I'd done a song for a TV commercial. We were really fortunate that we had that to be our lifeline, because I couldn't work. She couldn't work. We were taking care of our kid, taking care of her, getting her healthy, because we didn't want to do it through a bunch of pharmaceuticals and surgeries. We wanted to heal her naturally and restore her. And so I was just writing songs every day, in the middle of the night, early in the morning, with my son by my side, with my wife holding my son, just like in the kitchen. Like, I have voice memos of 140. So I don't even remember the count, but it's a lot.
Wow.
I've listened back through some of them are total trash.
See, I was under the impression that Rabbit Runs to Destiny was out after that whole thing had happened, but it sounds like you put that record out, and then right after that was when kind of you found out your wife was pregnant, and then this all happens.
It all was sort of simultaneous. I worked for a couple of years on that Rabbit record. It's a bunch of Nashville musicians all over. That Rabbit record is like Kyle Ryan and Adam Popick, who's now out in LA, and Eric Massey. He's got a recording studio. Kyle was Casey Musgrave's band leader for a long time. Eric Massey done tons of amazing records. And then all my string section, Eleanor Dennig, Larissa Maestro, Kristen Weber, like Johnny Murray, like that played with Anderson East, like a whole lot of Nashville on that last record. But all of it happened at the same time. And I never stop writing songs. Even when a record is out, I just try to constantly write. And so as I started demoing for the Social Animals, I tracked down John Agnello, who produced the record. And I'd done work with John back in the 90s with Verbena. We did pre-production for a record. And that's when I left Verbena. They fired him. And I was just like, hey man, I'd love to reconnect. And I went and had a coffee with him in New Jersey, because I happened to be up there doing some shows, and I started sending him demos, and we emailed back and forth for a year, and figuring out who the band was going to be. He sent the songs to Steve Shelley from Sonic Youth, and Steve offered their studio in New Jersey. So rather than trying to fly everybody to Birmingham and house everybody, because we're trying to figure out how do we do this on a budget and get the album we want.
Especially during a pandemic? Was that happening?
This was this was pre-pandemic. This was 2016. Okay. So in 2015, New Year's Eve, my wife and I sat down and started this new thing we do, where we write out our intentions for the year. What do we want to see? How do we visualize our life? What do we want to see happen? And at the end of the night, that was like one of the most transformative New Year's Eves of my life, because at the end of the night, I had two things I wanted to do. And that was learn how to open a shop. Like we have a boutique and brand called Club Duquette. I wanted to learn how to write a business plan to open a shop. And I wanted to make a record with John Agnello. And 9 months later, we opened the doors to our shop. And the next day I flew to New Jersey and started the record with John Agnello.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. What a cool thing too. I like that a lot, to write down your dreams or goals for the year.
And it wasn't even like and everybody is going to do it their own way. And for us, it was about creating a more intentional life. How do we want to design our life to live it? And since then, we've even dialed more into it, like getting into human design and learning about how we function best, doing a program called To Being Magnetic, where we're like going in and healing like childhood traumas and things that cause like limiting beliefs, self-doubt, like blocks from being creative and going all in on what you do. So like that's what I've been doing a ton of during the pandemic. But the record started 2016. We did a week at Sonic Youth Studio. And I'd done so much pre-production work. That's probably the most pre-production I've ever done, like demoing almost every single song, whether it was on the phone, on my iPad, or in a studio, and sending it to John, and knowing what we were gonna go for sonically before we even stepped foot in the studio. So that when I had hired musicians, hired producer, we were there and focused and on it. And there were no egos when we made this record. Everyone was like, what is working best for the song? It was probably one of the easiest recording sessions I've ever done. We did a week at Sonic Youth doing rhythm tracks, some in vocals, some scratch. I came to Birmingham, back to Birmingham. John came down that November. We did all the overdubs at Communicating Vessels with a bunch of Birmingham friends and musicians all playing on it. And then January of 2017, I went to New Jersey. We mixed it in a week. Then the next month it got mastered, and then it was done. So that's 2017. We're in what, 2022?
Yeah.
So 2017, I started working on album artwork and changing the name of the album from The Social Animals to Holy Child to something else, to Back to the Social Animals, changing the artwork from photographs to things I was mocking up, to a painting from a friend, Marilee Chalice, that was very psychedelic and very mystical, and all these elements that connect to the record. But then I started getting these ideas because I was listening to so much jazz music, and I'm really inspired visually. I write a lot of songs off of images that I see, paintings, photographs, memories. And there's a photographer that I love, Miller Mobley, who did the photos for my album, the press photos, the cover. And I reached out to Miller. He does insane portraits. He collaborated with Meek Mill on this whole album artwork project that I thought was really inspiring. So I met with Miller, and he was like, man, send me ideas. And so I started sending Miller mood boards. A collaborator have worked with for years on all my merchandise and with Club Duquette was my best friend, Matt Lane Harris. He connected me to a young designer, Paul Prudhomme. Like, things took a lot of time. We had a direction we were going in 2019. Like, I'd sent the record to Single Lock. They asked if I was willing to wait to release it because they had a lot going on. And at this point I was like, yeah, what's another year?
Right.
Not knowing the pandemic was coming. And then, yeah, we reissued Etowah on Single Lock in 2019 with the plans of releasing The Social Animals in 2020. And then the pandemic hit and we stopped. And yeah, we took our time, like dialing in the packaging, the design, and just being patient, man, and waiting until we were like, all right, we can't wait any longer. Let's do this. And so now the album's out.
Yeah, and it just came out like
Last
10
week,
days ago.
Friday.
Yeah.
It was last week, last 7 days.
7 days ago. Wow. That's amazing. I mean, how does it feel? Like you had been sitting on it essentially for what, 5 years? It sounds like 4 or 5 years before.
Yeah, to not release a record for 9 years is crazy. To sit on one for 5 years is really challenging.
Yeah.
And forces you to go through a lot of growth and trust in the universe. But I honestly don't think I was ready to release this record when the record was done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does make sense.
Like deep inside, and I get all woo-woo and all sorts of these interviews and conversations, but it's who I am. And for me, sometimes rock and roll is just rock and roll. But for me, like, music is something much deeper. It always has. It's been a guide to my life. It's healed me when I've been sad. It's made me more joyous than I've ever felt in my life. It's taking me around the globe. It has brought me friendships that will never go away. So I can look back now to where I was when the record was finished, and even look back to pre-pandemic, and know deep in my heart and subconscious that I was not ready to release an album and trust the universe to do what we're doing with it, and to have the moments and connections with people that I hope to get with it.
That's incredible. That's what. But it sounds like you write a lot. Like,
during the pandemic, I've been writing nonstop. Like,
Yeah, and it's like, and if you look at 5 years that you've been holding the record, you probably have a whole ton of material. And with that, it's like, is it hard to go, yeah, this record's amazing. I love what I did, but you should wait till you hear, what I like, as the musicians are, it's moving forward. It's like, you wait till you hear this. And like, it's hard to talk about, the future, I guess, since the record just came out a
right.
week ago. But I would imagine that's kind of probably something that's in your head a bit.
I mean, the thing that's in my head is I need to pause writing and take the time to sift through songs very intentionally. And because this is what I did for the Social Animals, was I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and then it got to where, okay, one day I sat down and I would listen through, and I created folders on my computer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I want to make this electric, like, rock and roll album with John Agnello, and songs that I felt would fit in that category, I'd put in that folder. And then others, I'm like, oh, this could be a way more sparse record I do at my house or with my friend Jeffrey or something. That's over here. And then there's just miscellaneous ideas, riffs, one verse, something, whatever it may be. So now, yeah, this record is just out, and I'm like, I need to demo the next one. Like, right. I'm ready. I'm trying to remain very present in this record because we're just getting started.
Yeah.
The challenge for artists is, especially when you've waited this long, is like release day comes and then you're like, now what?
Right. It's out to the world. Here we go.
But it's really just the beginning, because it takes some people so long to hear a record or to connect with a record that it's not, the old way of a lot of music industry is like, they do all the work building up to it. And then 3 weeks after it's out, it's like, all right, well, we did our thing. Let's move on to the next.
Yeah. Or you do a tour or something like that, and then you're back and it's like, okay, now what? We got to keep going forward. We got to keep moving forward.
Yeah. It's a challenge. So I'm trying to remain really present with this record, The Social Animals, because I'm just now getting back to playing shows. Mm-hmm. We're just getting started doing with what we want to do with it. Because I also have Club Duquette. My wife is a full-time amazing artist, painter, and everything we do is kind of all intertwined together. And so trying to do shows where we show up and it's displaying her art, and I do a set, and we have a little mini Club Duquette set up. It's we do things a little bit differently, but at the same time, I don't want it to be 9 years before my next record comes out. So I need to, and when I say stop writing, I've had this problem during the pandemic where I just wanted to keep writing ideas. So if I grab the guitar, generally I'm going to write something instead of, I need to like have my, Logic Pro set up ready and start combing through the songs and doing demos at home. Like, you can do both. You can be present and be promoting your record, but in the wee hours of the night or on a day when I can be here in the studio space, starting to come through and do that. You have to show up. And it's different for everybody. No judgments on how people write, but the more you show up for your art, the more your art is going to show up for you. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to be easy every day. It's not going to just fall out of the sky. Sometimes it does. Sometimes, like, some people's greatest songs were written in just a matter of minutes because they weren't thinking about it. That's mm-hmm. what I got out of their way, out of their ego, out of their head. But I think, I'm ready to show up and demo the next record and get it recorded.
That's amazing. And you talked to, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No.
And I have no idea what I was going to say, man.
Okay.
I'll over talk you. I'm trying to get better about interrupting.
No. It's all about you, not me. No one cares what I have to say. I was just curious to know, like,
your voice matters, Adam. Your voice matters.
I appreciate that. Well, it sounds like you're doing some shows with, like, hand in hand with the company, right? With Club Duquette. Like, your wife will do her art show and you're playing a set or something like that. Is that what's kind of going on?
Yeah. So, like, we're doing, like, right after, like, I'm about to go to South by Southwest, and then after that we're doing a residency up in North Carolina at this place, the Highlander Mountain House, that my dear friend and amazing songwriter and human Shelley Colvin, Nashville musician, set us up with, where Morgan will show her art for the week. Because my music merch is Club Duquette merch, we'll have, like, my merch table is always just a little mini Club Duquette, so that'll be set up, and then I'll do a show and it'll just be me solo. And then I'm also working on doing these other events at gallery spaces and boutiques where it's a duo, just me and a guitar player. And then some of those things will work where my wife's art could potentially be there. But then I'm also working on, and booking full band shows, Europe, US. I'm game to go wherever, depending upon the conflicts in the world and the craziness that's freaking happening. But yeah, we just really we have done. It's not always easy. I'm still learning every freaking day how to run the shop and run a better business. But we just wanted to be able to live a very creative life on our terms, our way, without having to work for somebody else, because we're both very strong-willed and not good with authority.
Oh, well, that's amazing. Congratulations on everything. And I really appreciate you doing this interview, Duquette. This has been so awesome. And
we went on a deep dive, man. I like it.
We did, and I was like so fascinated. It was such a fascinating story. And again, I really, really appreciate it. I do have one more question. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Don't give up. Don't believe naysayers. Like, put in the work, show up, like, believe in yourself. It's man, so many people, artists, are told when you're young, like, have plan B, because you're not going to make money making art, and not everybody will make money making art. But it drives me crazy when people are still like, if you think that negative and speak that negative, why the hell would you succeed? And how are you gonna make it? You have to believe it. You have to, like, put on your blinders, put on your hearing protection, and block the people out, like, yeah, you may have to work another job for a while. Yeah, you may have to do this, but man, life is short and long. Short meaning you get one life, you get to do this one time. So why be miserable, right? Like, if you want to make art, no matter what. Make freaking art. I don't mean no matter what, like in a bad way, but show up every day. I mean, my wife goes into the studio every day and paints, even when it is crazy difficult. I try to grab my guitar every single day or do something creatively. That advice is believe in yourself, show up, be kind, don't do hard drugs. Yeah, man, just be a good human and show up for yourself and others. You'll be all right.